අද්විතීය 200 Mbps ස්පීඩ් එකකින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ වේගවත්ම සහ පුළුල්තම හෝම් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සම්බන්ධතාවය වන SLT මොබිටෙල් දේශීය ෆයිබර් බලවේගය ඔබත් අදම අත්විඳින්න.
හරිම සුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9, this Sunday, the 9th of April 2023. No more crisis. IMF Senior Mission Chief for Sri Lanka calls all Sri Lankans to work together to tackle the economic challenges at hand.
It's critical to ensure the hard-won gains from the reforms benefit the Sri Lankan people and the crisis will not repeat itself.
Open for petitions. Government awaiting Supreme Court determination on new anti-terrorism bill, says Minister of Justice.
If there is any defect or unconstitutional provisions in this bill, we are ready to adhere to any determination or recommendation that could be made by the Supreme Court.
Easter assurances. Pope Francis encourages hope amid icy winds of war. President Ranil Wickremesinghe promises justice for all victims of Easter attacks. Sri Lanka's cardinal, however, remains wary of efforts for justice and truth.
Now the Easter attack. How many years? 4 years. Still no justice. Still no one knows what happened.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9 with Indivadi Amuatta. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Alliance Finance මෙතුරු රන්නයි සේවාවෙන් රන් පවුම්කට රුපියල් 1,70,000ක ඉහළ අතිකාරමක්.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දිනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
And a warm welcome. We take you to your top stories tonight. State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinghe, Treasury Secretary Mahinda Siriwardana and Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe left for Washington, D.C. to participate in the World Bank IMF spring meetings. Shehan Semasinghe is of the view that IMF World Bank spring meetings will be a great opportunity to enhance cooperation with international partners in order to achieve debt sustainability and to further the process and progress Sri Lanka has made towards economic recovery.
The 2023 spring meetings of the World Bank Group and the International Monetary Fund are expected to begin in Washington, D.C. in the United States tomorrow. The spring meetings are joined by central bankers, ministers, private sector executives, civil society representatives, youth leaders, academics, and others to discuss the most pressing challenges facing the world today and how they can be better addressed in a bid to promote growth, equity, and prosperity for all. Representing Sri Lanka, State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinghe and Treasury Secretary Mahinda Siriwardana left for Washington yesterday to participate in the spring meetings. Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe left the island this morning for Washington, D.C. In a tweet, the State Minister of Finance noted that IMF World Bank spring meetings will be a great opportunity for Sri Lanka to enhance cooperation with international partners to ensure debt sustainability and to further the progress Sri Lanka have made towards economic recovery.
International Monetary Fund Senior Mission Chief for Sri Lanka, Peter Brewer, calls on all Sri Lankans to work together to tackle the enormous economic challenges that the country is facing and to support economic recovery towards stable and inclusive growth. Issuing a special statement, Brewer said it is critical to ensure that the hard-won gains from the reforms benefit the Sri Lankan people and the crisis will not repeat itself.
After years of increasing economic problems and policy mistakes, Sri Lanka has committed to reform and rebuild. The IMF is here to help. The fund has approved about $3 billion over the next 4 years to support Sri Lanka in this time of need. Since 2019, significant tax cuts and delays in anticipated reforms have left the country entering the pandemic with thin currency reserves, high debt levels, and no fiscal space to buffer against shocks. With no reserves left, power cuts, shortages of food and medicine, and long lines for petrol emerged. Sri Lanka defaulted on its debt for the first time in its history. There are no easy solutions, but that's where everyone must come together to tackle this enormous problem. Sri Lankans must make efforts to continue on their way out of the crisis while supporting the less fortunate. The global community must support Sri Lanka in this effort so that it can once again be on a path of strong and inclusive growth. Working with the fund, the Sri Lankan authorities have put together an ambitious economic recovery program. It includes reforms to raise government revenue, stabilize prices, build up foreign reserves, and safeguard financial stability. The Sri Lankan authorities are also asking their creditors to support their efforts by granting debt relief. When a crisis strikes, the poor are hit hardest. The program aims to raise spending for the poor and vulnerable, strengthen social safety nets, and introduce progressive tax reforms to ensure greater contributions come from high-income earners. With breathing room from external debt relief, we expect the economy to gradually start to recover and expand. It's critical to ensure the hard-won gains from the reforms benefit the Sri Lankan people and the crisis will not repeat itself. The authorities have committed to improve public financial management and strengthen the anti-corruption legal framework. In addition, the IMF will assess governance and corruption vulnerabilities and provide recommendations. We at the IMF look forward to working closely with the people of Sri Lanka for a brighter future for all.
The Sri Lankan government says it will await a Supreme Court determination on the new anti-terrorism bill that will repeal the Prevention of Terrorism Act. Justice Minister Dr. Wijayadasa Rajapaksa said government will await Supreme Court opinion to make required amendments to the bill if any provisions are deemed unconstitutional. Government was earlier expected to present the new anti-terrorism bill in Parliament on the 4th of April, but the minister said that the intentional delay is to allow interested parties to file petitions challenging the bill before the Supreme Court.
There has been a myth spread through many medias under the guise that this law will help to protect the government and the president. It is totally incorrect. The government is not going to get any benefit out of this bill. This is to protect the people and that sovereignty and integrity of the country. When we make a law of this nature, there is one criteria that is being followed in every part of the world. That is, on one side, that's the duty of the government, that is to protect the people, integrity of the country, sovereignty of the people, and properties of the people, national resources. On the other hand, our constitution has guaranteed the fundamental rights. This is a case where that you will have to evaluate both and make it a balanced evaluation and to make a law. Without a law of this nature, no country can survive. The criticism about the bill by many organizations and individuals are welcome, and in fact that this was in the agenda to be presented to the Parliament on 4th of April, but at the request of lawyers and many other civil society organizations, we put off for the next session of the Parliament, accommodating them to go to the Supreme Court and to challenge this bill. If it was presented on 4th, the chances to go to the Supreme Court was very less because of the intervening court vacation. Now that we have given more opportunities for them to go to the Supreme Court, we also like that finally it will be interpreted by the Supreme Court. If there is any lacuna or defect or the unconstitutional provisions in this bill, we are ready to adhere to any determination or recommendation that could be made by the Supreme Court.
And a meeting is scheduled to be held between Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena and the Election Commission tomorrow. According to Prime Minister's media, the discussion is expected to focus on local government elections, which has been postponed multiple times. On March 23rd, the Election Commission last postponed postal voting due to lack of funds to print ballot papers. The Commission said the local government election, which was rescheduled for the 25th of April, is most likely to be postponed again under the prevailing circumstances. General Secretary of Sri Lanka, Podujana Peramuna Sagara Karyavasam, is of the view the people will soon demand a national economy based on nationalism and patriotism. He made these comments while addressing a SLPP public gathering in Kolonnawa. Meanwhile, SLPP parliamentarian Namal Rajapaksa said the current government will take necessary steps to uplift the living standards of the people in urban settings affected from the crisis.
The Colonava electorate meeting of Sri Lanka Podu Jana Peramuna was held yesterday under the patronage of its party leaders.
පරිච්ඡේදය තමයි මේ රටේ ණය ගත්ත නැති හැබැයි ණය ගෙවපු කාල පරිච්ඡේදය.
The SLPP did not intend to develop this country by taking loans and leaving your children indebted. Despite the economic difficulties, we managed to repay debt during our period and did not borrow debt. The people of the country will need the SLPP in the future. The people of the country will soon take to the streets and demand a national economy based on nationalism and patriotism.
ජාතික ආර්ථිකයකට යන්න අවශ්‍යයි කියලා මේ රටේ මිනිස්සු තව වැඩි කාලයක් නොගින් පාරට බහැලා කෑ ගහන්න ගත්තා.
පහුගිය ජනාධිපතිවරණයේ අපේක්ෂකයා තේරීම සම්බන්ධයෙන් අපේ පක්ෂයට වැරදුනා.
Our party made a mistake when appointing the candidate for the presidential election. However, we received an opportunity to appoint a president from the parliament. Our party supported President Ranil Wickremesinghe. I do not see it as a wrong decision.
අපේ පක්ෂයේ රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මැතිතුමා ජනාධිපති ධූරයට පත් කරා. ඒ තීන්දුව වැරදි තීන්දුවක් කියලා මම විශ්වාස කරන්නේ නැහැ.
රාජ්‍ය ආයතන ලාභ ලබන ආයතන බවට අපි පත් කරන්න ඕනේ.
We must convert state-owned enterprises into profit-making ventures. We have to bring in investments. However, we should not enter into agreements that can be detrimental to our country. We have criticisms with regard to the current tax policy. The taxes are high, especially for those living in cities. Most of them in urban settings depend on daily wages. There is currently no work for those who depend on daily wages. There are no constructions. While continuing the discussions with the IMF, I believe that the current government will take necessary steps to uplift the national economy, the rural economy, as well as the livelihoods of the people living in urban settings. As a party, we are paying our attention to this.
පක්ෂයක් විදිහට පිළිබඳ අවධානයෙන් ඉන්න.
Independent parliamentarian Professor Channa Jayasumana says MP crossovers and changes in ministerial portfolios can take place between the 20th and the 30th of April. Professor Jayasumana said their faction is ready to support any decision that will have a positive impact on Sri Lanka, regardless of it being taken by the government or the opposition.
ජාත්‍යන්තර මුල්්‍යාර මුදල දීපු බෙහෙත් වට්ටෝරුව ගෙනියන එක ඇරෙන්න මේ රටේ නිෂ්පාදනය බලගන්වන්න කර්මාන්ත බලගන්වන්න දේශීය අපනයනය ඉහළ නම්වන්න ඒවට කිසිම උපාය මාර්ගික මැදිහත්වීමක් නැහැ. ඒ නිසා අපි විශ්වාස කරන්නේ ඇමති මණ්ඩලයේ තව වැඩි කරයි කියලා මේ තියෙන අර්බුදයෙන් ගොඩ එන්න මාවතක් පෑදේ කියලා.
දන්නවා රාජිත සේනාරත්න දොස්තර මහත්තයා හැමතිස්සෙම ඇමතිකමක් දුන්නොත් යනවයි කියලා කියනවා. මෙවැනි ආණ්ඩුවකට ওই තරම් යන්න දඟලන්නේ ඇයි කියන එක නම් මට තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ. අනිවාර්යෙන්ම මමත් පෞද්ගලික විශ්වාස කරනවා පක්ෂයේ මේ සම්බන්ධව තීන්දුවක් ගත යුතුයි කියන අදහස මමත් තියෙනවා.
සිංහල අවුරුද්දෙන් පස්සේ එළඹෙන සති දෙක මේ රටේ දේශපාලනයේ ඉතාම තීරණාත්මක සති දෙකක් වගේ. මොකද පිල් මාරු වීම, ඇමති මාරු වීම, විවිධ දේවල් ගොඩක් අප්‍රේල් 20යි 30යි අතර කාල වෙන්න පුළුවන් ස්වභාවයක් තමයි අපිට පේන්නේ. හැබැයි දැනට නම් අපි කිසිම පාර්ශවයකට ගැති වෙලා වැඩ කරන්න එහෙම බලාපොරොත්තුවක් නැහැ. හැබැයි රටට යහපතක් වෙන තීරණයක් විපක්ෂ පක්ෂ කවුරු ගත්තත් හොඳ දෙයක් කරනවා නම් ඒ සඳහා අපේ සහාය හිමි වෙනවා.
Although Sri Lanka's cardinal questions efforts to uncover the truth and provide justice for Easter attacks victims, President Ranil Wickremesinghe assures justice for all after this break.
ගොඩමට පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන් කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ඩීමෝ වෙතින්. වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ඩීමෝ වෙතින්.
අසම සම සන්නාමයක ශක්තිමත් බව ෆිච් ඒ මූල්‍ය වර්ගීකරණය හිමිකරගත් එකම රක්ෂණ ආයතනය. පස්වන වරටත් ග්‍රෑන්ඩ් ෆයිනෑන්සි වැඩිම වටිනාකමකින් යුත් සාමාන්‍ය රක්ෂණ සන්නාමය සහ ඉහළම ජනාදරයට පත් වූ රක්ෂණ සන්නාමය. Sri Lanka Insurance.
Christians around the world marked Easter Sunday today, commemorating Jesus Christ's resurrection from death. President Ranil Wickremesinghe, in his Easter Sunday message, assured justice for all victims of the tragic Easter Sunday attacks of 2019, adding that legal proceedings are ongoing independently and impartially. Meanwhile, in the Vatican City, during the Easter Vigil Mass at St. Peter's Basilica, His Holiness Pope Francis encouraged hope amid icy winds of war.
Easter Sunday, which commemorates Jesus Christ's resurrection from death, as written in the Bible, is marked today by Christians across the world. During the course of the day, masses and celebrations were held across Sri Lanka to commemorate Easter Sunday. Midnight Mass under the patronage of Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjith, was held at St. Lucia's Cathedral in Kotahena.
We have to transform, we have to change, we have to engage. Now the Easter attack. How many years? 4 years. Still no justice. Still no one knows what happened. All kinds of things are being said by people. Why? Because nobody wants to commit himself or herself to that. That is why it is important that we struggle for justice, for truth. That is Christianity.
St. Anthony's Shrine in Kochikade, St. Sebastian's Shrine in Katuapitiya and the Zion Church in Batiklo, which were targets of the 2019 Easter Sunday attacks that killed over 260 people, also carried out Easter Sunday masses and commemorated the victims. Meanwhile, in his Easter Sunday message, President Ranil Wickremesinghe called on all Sri Lankans to unite and work for a brighter future for Sri Lanka and assured that the legal proceedings related to the tragic 2019 Easter Sunday attacks are carried out independently and impartially. The head of state said necessary groundwork towards has been laid to ensure justice for all the victims and pledged his unwavering commitment to ensuring the security of the country. In his Easter Sunday message, Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena called on Sri Lankans to make Easter a platform to refocus the path to human relations and social norms which are susceptible to insensitive communication and social misunderstandings. In the meantime, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa, who expressed his solidarity with the victims of the attack and their families, emphasized the need for justice towards the attack victims. In his Easter Sunday message, Premadasa also said that it is the responsibility of authorities to ensure that perpetrators are held accountable for their actions. Meanwhile, in the Vatican City, Pope Francis returned to public view yesterday, presiding over the Easter Vigil Mass at St. Peter's Basilica.
Quas in substantiam preziose.
Cioè del riandare non a ci siamo sentiti impotenti, scoraggiati dinanzi al potere del male, ai conflitti che lacerano le relazioni, alle logiche del calcolo e dell'indifferenza che sembrano governare la società, al cancro della corruzione, c'è tanta, al dilagare dell'ingiustizia, ai venti gelidi della guerra. Per camminare dobbiamo ricordare. Per avere speranza dobbiamo nutrire la memoria. E questo è l'invito, ricorda e cammina.
And we take you to business news. Founder of the initiative Aramuna, entrepreneur Dilip Jaivira points out that Sri Lankan businesses should focus on brand building to take their ventures to the next level. Speaking at yet another symposium of the Aramuna series, Dilip Jaivira encouraged local entrepreneurs to employ novel concepts to sustainably contribute to the national economy.
Another symposium of the Aramuna initiative was organized in Bandarawala yesterday under the patronage of its founder, entrepreneur Dilip Jaivira.
මේ ප්‍රාග්ධනය කැපිටල් එක කොහොම හරි විදියකට ප්‍රොටෙක්ට් කරගන්න ඒකට උපාය මාර්ගිකව අපි මුහුණ දිය යුතුයි. වෙන රටවල් කොහොමද මේකට මුහුණ දෙන්නේ කියලා බැලුවොත් ඒගොල්ලෝ පාවිච්චි කරන වචනේ තමයි ස්කේල් ඩවුන්. ව්‍යාපාරය ස්කේල් ඩවුන් කරනවා පවත්වාගෙන යාම සඳහා පමණක්. දෙවැනි එක විවිධාංගීකරණය. අනිත් පැත්තට මොනවද ලයින් එක්ස්ටෙන්ෂන්ස් කරන්න පුළුවන්ද ඒ සේම් කැපිටල් එකම තියාගෙන. ඊටත් වැඩියේ මේක ගොඩ එන්න නම් අර සන්නාමකරණයට බහින්න ඕන. බ්‍රෑන්ඩ් බිල්ඩින් වලට. ඉතින් ඔබගේ භාණ්ඩය හෝ සේවාව ප්‍රොඩක්ට් එකෙන් උඩට ගෙනහිල්ලා බ්‍රෑන්ඩ් එකක් කරන්න ඕන. අපිට ඕන මේ රට ව්‍යවසායකත්වයේ අගයන ධනාත්මක සන්දර්භයක වන සාකච්ඡාවන්.
Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, Kristalina Georgieva, says cost of global fragmentation can be high, with trade fragmentation could alone be 7% of global GDP, roughly the equivalent of the combined output of Germany and Japan. During her World Bank IMF spring meetings curtain raisers speech, Georgieva said about a quarter of emerging market economies are at high risk of facing default, like borrowing costs.
We have done extensive research on the costs of fragmentation, and it is a very, very scary picture. Long-term costs of trade fragmentation could be as high as 7% of global GDP, roughly the equivalent of the combined output of Germany and Japan. If we add technological decoupling, then some countries would face losses up to 12% of GDP. And we just published a paper on fragmentation of capital flows, including foreign direct investments. They would be adding another hit on global growth. It's hard to put in one place the combined impact of all losses, but one thing we know for sure, they head in the wrong direction. About 15% of low-income countries are in that distress, an additional 45% are near it. About a quarter of emerging market economies are at high risk, facing default-like borrowing costs. And this has raised a legitimate concern about the potential wave of debt restructuring cases and how to handle them at a time when current restructuring has proven to be difficult with costly delays.
And that's all from us here tonight on First at 9. We'll see you again tomorrow at the same time with the very latest from across Sri Lanka and around the world. I'm Indivari Amuatha. Good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.